When thinking about North Korea, what is the first thing that comes to mind? Perhaps nuclear weapons. Or those ballistic missiles capable of reaching thousands of kilometers. Or the image of the most closed, mysterious, and unpredictable nation in the world. But for many governments and intelligence agencies, the most worrying thing about North Korea does not lie in any of those. The thing they are truly concerned with is a different question. What would happen if Kim Jong-un were to suddenly disappear? This is not an unfounded hypothesis. For many years, intelligence circles, research institutes, and many governments have repeatedly analyzed this exact scenario. The reason is simple. North Korea is currently one of the very few countries in the world where almost all military, political, and nuclear power is concentrated in a single individual. But unlike most other nations, no one truly knows who would take over if that position were suddenly left vacant. Would power be transferred quietly, or would the country that possesses one of the world's most dangerous arsenals enter a crisis that no one can predict? First, we need to understand one thing. Is North Korea's power system different from almost every other country? If a head of state suddenly becomes unable to run the country, most nations have a contingency plan in place. In the US, the Constitution clearly stipulates that the vice president will assume power if the president cannot continue their duties. Many other countries also build similar succession mechanisms to ensure that the state apparatus still functions even when unexpected situations occur. That helps minimize one of the biggest risks for any country, a power vacuum. North Korea, however, is a completely different case. Legally, this country still has a government, a cabinet, and many leadership bodies. But in reality, power is not distributed in the way that we often see in other countries. For many years, Kim Jong-un has simultaneously held the most influential positions in the political and military systems of North Korea. He is the supreme leader of the Workers' Party of Korea, the head of the Central Military Commission, and the supreme commander of the armed forces. More importantly, he is also the person who makes the final decisions on the strategic issues of the country, from foreign policy to missile and nuclear programs. In other words, many important links in the state machinery all converge at the same center of power. Precisely because of this, the question that security experts raise is not simply, who will be the successor? But rather, can this system operate normally if that center of power suddenly disappears? This is not a hypothetical question. In 2020, when Kim Jong-un was suddenly absent for nearly 3 weeks and did not appear at the birthday celebration of Kim Il-sung, the most important political event in North Korea, a series of speculations quickly appeared. Many international news agencies reported on the possibility of him having serious health problems, while governments and intelligence agencies in the region closely monitored every development. In the end, Kim Jong-un reappeared, and the rumors gradually subsided. Regardless of the true cause, the reaction of the international community showed the sensitivity of this issue. Just the mere suspicion of a power vacuum in North Korea causes the entire Northeast Asian region to immediately enter a state of high alert. That shows that what makes the world concerned is not just the fate of one leader. It is about who will control a country that possesses a powerful army, a ballistic missile program, and a nuclear arsenal if the highest position of power is suddenly left vacant. The problem is, to this day, there is still no official statement confirming who will be the successor to Kim Jong-un. So, what do the signs that the world is observing really say? For decades, the life of North Korea's leadership family has almost never been made public. Information about the wife, children, or family members of Kim Jong-un appears very sparsely in state media. Therefore, any change in the way Pyongyang builds the image of the leadership family quickly attracts the attention of analysts. The turning point appeared in November 2022, after a test of the Hwasong-17 intercontinental ballistic missile. North Korean state media for the first time released images of Kim Jong-un appearing with his daughter at the scene. This was the first time the world saw the girl at such an important political and military event. If it were just one appearance, it could be seen as a symbolic event. But what made experts start asking questions was what happened after that. Throughout the years 2023, 2024, and 2025, Kim Jong-un continuously appeared beside her father at many events that were previously almost exclusively for the leadership and the military. From military parades, warship launch ceremonies, and visits to military units, to inspections of defense facilities. She often stood in a prominent position and appeared with increasing frequency in state media. For many observers of North Korea, the notable thing is not that she appeared, but the context of those appearances. The majority are linked to the military, missile programs, or events demonstrating national power. These are also the areas that are always seen as the power foundation of the North Korean regime. Not only that, but the way state media refers to Kim Jong-un also changed. From the leader's daughter, she was gradually called by titles such as the respected child or the most beloved child. In North Korea's propaganda system, these ways of addressing are often seen as signs of elevating the political status of an individual. However, to this moment, there has still not been any official statement confirming Kim Jong-un is the successor to Kim Jong-un. Many researchers think these appearances could be signals preparing for a future power transition process. But there are also opinions that this is just a propaganda strategy to build an image of Kim Jong-un as a father, while simultaneously consolidating the legitimacy of the Kim dynasty. In other words, the same sequence of events, but existing in many different ways of interpretation. And that leads to a new question. If Kim Jong-un has still not been confirmed as the successor, then who else is capable of filling the power vacuum if it were to truly happen? Kim Yo-jong is the name mentioned the most. She often acts on behalf of Pyongyang to issue tough statements to South Korea and the US, participates in coordinating foreign affairs, and at the same time appears in many important political events. The strength of Kim Yo-jong is experience, understanding the power apparatus, and having practical influence within the regime. But the weakness is also very clear. Up until now, there is no sign that she is being built as the official successor. In the propaganda system of North Korea, the image of Kim Yo-jong is always associated with a supporting role rather than the position of supreme leader. More importantly, North Korea has never had a female leader. The 3 generations of leadership of the Kim family, including Kim Il-sung, Kim Jong-il, Kim Jong-un, are all male. If Kim Yo-jong becomes the supreme leader, it would be an unprecedented turning point in the history of the country. Therefore, many experts think that she could play the role of an operator or regent, but the possibility of officially succeeding is still a question mark. Kim Jong-un is the name that has caused the most attention in recent years. Since the end of 2022, she has continuously appeared with her father in intercontinental ballistic missile tests, military parades, and many strategic events. Notably, her position in propaganda images is key. Kim Jong-un often stands next to Kim Jong-un, next to strategic missile systems, and in the center of the frame. State media also began using special titles with reverent implications, which many researchers see as the first step of the process of building legitimacy. If this reflects a succession plan, Kim Jong-un could become the first female leader in the history of North Korea. However, the biggest obstacle is still her age. She is still too young, does not have political experience, and has never held any official position in the state apparatus. That makes the possibility of an immediate power transfer very unlikely to happen. If there is no individual strong enough to win consensus, the military could become the deciding force. In the North Korean political system, the military not only protects the country, but is also one of the pillars maintaining the regime. If a power vacuum appears, the generals are likely the force that will maintain stability and ensure the transition process does not fall into chaos. However, that does not mean the military will directly rule for a long time. Their biggest role could be deciding who is capable of becoming the next leader. Another possibility is that the Workers' Party of Korea will not immediately choose a single individual. Instead, power could temporarily be shared among many high-ranking leaders to maintain stability in the transitional period. This is a model that has appeared in some socialist countries, even though North Korea has never officially applied it. The history of Kim Jong-un himself shows that he does not accept any center of power existing outside of himself. In 2013, Jang Song-taek, who was once considered the number 2 powerful figure of the regime and even assessed by many experts as potentially playing the role of an interim leader, was arrested, brought to trial, and then executed. The incident shocked the world. The message that it sent was also very clear. In the system of Kim Jong-un, No individual is allowed to build a center of power strong enough to compete with the supreme leader. That also makes determining a successor become much more difficult. Even if a successor is found, there is still another problem. That is the Songbun system. Songbun is a mechanism for classifying the level of loyalty of each citizen and official to the regime. Each person is classified into groups such as loyal, neutral, or hostile. This system affects almost every aspect of life, from educational opportunities, career, to positions in the military, police, and the state apparatus. If the head suddenly disappears without a successor capable of control, the entire network of power operating based on Songbun could fall into a state of instability. That is the reason why many experts think that the power transition in North Korea is not just a story of one person, but of an entire system. So who is truly the successor to Kim Jong-un? If Kim Jong-un were to suddenly disappear, the first thing the world would witness would likely not be an official announcement, but it would be silence. This is not something that has never happened. When Kim Jong-il passed away in 2011, Pyongyang did not announce the information immediately. It took nearly 2 days later before state media officially announced it to the people. That period of time was considered enough for the leadership apparatus to complete the first preparatory steps for the process of power transition. Because of this precedent, many experts think that if Kim Jong-un meets an incident, the first thing that happens is also likely not to be a public announcement. Instead, state media could still broadcast normally, while high-ranking leaders meet in private to control the situation. The top priority will not be to announce a successor, but to ensure the power apparatus does not fall into chaos. The military will quickly be put in a state of highest readiness. Military bases, nuclear facilities, and borders will be strictly controlled to maintain domestic stability. Meanwhile, neighboring countries will also immediately react. The US, South Korea, and Japan will increase monitoring of missile bases, military activities, and nuclear arsenals via satellites, reconnaissance aircraft, and naval forces. Not because war has begun, but because no one knows what will happen next. In the north, China will be particularly worried about the risk of refugees crossing the border and the possibility of losing control over the nuclear arsenal of North Korea. Just the disappearance of one human being could make the entire Northeast Asian region enter a state of high alert. That is what makes the world always monitor closely every time Kim Jong-un appears or suddenly disappears from the public. And if this hypothesis truly happens, and based on what is known about the North Korean political system, we have the following options. Kim Yo-jong is the most logical choice if the goal is to maintain immediate stability. She has experience, has influence in the apparatus, and understands how the system operates. However, the biggest weakness is not having been built as a successor in a regime that respects legitimacy. That could be a very large barrier. Kim Jong-un is completely the opposite. What she possesses is not experience, but bloodline. The times of appearing beside Kim Jong-un in military parades and missile tests show that her image is being built step by step. But the process of building an image is very far from actually holding power. At this moment, age is still the largest obstacle. The military is a scenario often mentioned when there is no individual strong enough. However, the possibility of the military directly ruling is not evaluated highly by many experts. Their practical role could be to ensure order, control the armed forces, and support the transition process, more than becoming a new center of power. So finally, it is collective leadership. This is perhaps the option that causes the least disturbance. Instead of handing all power to one individual, the Workers' Party could temporarily divide power between many high-ranking leaders to maintain stability. If Kim Jong-un is truly the person chosen in the future, a collective leadership apparatus could also play the role of a bridge until she is qualified to take over. The interesting thing is that these four scenarios do not exclude each other. A collective leadership could appear first. Kim Jong-un could operate during the transition period. The military could ensure security. And Kim Jong-un could be the long-term plan. That is also the reason why, until today, almost no expert dares to affirm who will be the successor to Kim Jong-un. Because in North Korea, Power does not just belong to one human, but also depends on how the whole system chooses to survive.